So this box originally was supposed to have a sliding top, and then after talking with the person who ordered it, she said, "Well, can I have just a open top?" Sure, that's less work. Since it's just going to be an open top box, I'm going to do a simpler box just out of a piece of oak. Basically, I'm going to cut this narrower because there's this chip out and a hole. And I'm probably also going to try and split it in half because it doesn't need to be that thick. And then just do a box joint box with a bottom in it. I think that'll work fine. It's supposed to be for a cat toy box, so it doesn't have to be super fancy, but I think the oak sides will be nice. So first I'm trimming it to width, and then taking it over to the bandsaw and making sure that the thickness is right, because when you only have one board, you got to make sure to get the cut correct. So, and cut that in half. That worked pretty good. Then clean it up on the drum sander. I really love the drum sander. It's awesome. That is one of my best purchases. It works for thicknessing, it works for all that good stuff. The only problem is sometimes if you run pine with sap through it, it clogs up the sandpaper, but that's cleanable, or you just switch to a different roll of paper. But yeah, so far I really am enjoying using this to get it to the exact thickness, and there you could see that there was some sap. Here I'm just making sure that the bit is high enough, so we're ready for box joints. Then I'm cutting things to length. I'm using the table saw fence to get the length and getting it out of the way to make sure and it doesn't bind, but that way I get the right length. Then just working on box joints. Going right across on the other side. Switchboards, repeat. So far this jig that I made for doing 1/4-inch box joints on the Rockler XL box joint jig has worked awesome. There's a little bit of tear out now and then on the back side, so I might want to replace the backer board at some point, but it's very minimal, and it may also be just that I'm pushing too fast and it's blowing out versus doing slower, or it could be just the wood is doing that. It's not all the time and it's not everywhere, so and there we go. The basic box joint, it looks like it makes a box. Here I'm cutting more to the final height and just making sure, cleaning up both edges, and that's all good. And oh look, it still makes a box, which is also good. Then run through the sanding process. Sanding's always fun. So here we started with, I think, an 80 grit, and then I went to 120, or maybe we started with 120. It was either 80 grit, then 120, then 180, and then 220. Yeah, so there we go. From 120, so I guess it was 120 to 180. The colors, the rougher colors are red, and the finer colors are the tan color for this sander, the Diablo sand pads. So the first one was, I guess, 120, and then we're doing 180, and this is 220, and just going through and getting it all nice and sanded. That works great. So far, so good. And I like the dust setup I have. And here we're doing the bottom of the box. This is probably a piece of either the back of a dresser or the bottom of a drawer from a dresser. But just cleaning it all up. I think it's poplar, but as for an old board, works great. And then just cutting things to make sure that here I'm doing the grooves for the box so that the bottom fits. And now we're just sizing the box width-wise and lengthwise. There we go. There's one direction, and make sure it's all right, and do the other direction. And so far, so good. The tape helps prevent tear out, so that's useful. Here I'm doing a sample test for the stain on another piece of the same cabinet oak that I used for the box sides, and that was approved by a lady who bought the box, so now I'm going in and filling in the holes in the sides and trimming off the corners. The holes are from where the slots come out from the box bottom. There's a little bit of hole, so I just fill that in with oak and then use my saw to clean it up and try and use some super glue and sawdust to fill in the gaps where there are some. I did fairly well. Sometimes it does works better than others. But yeah, it's just keep going. Lots of sides, lots of corners, lots of super glue. I highly recommend, if you're using this much super glue, to wear one of those vapor masks like you see me using in this video a lot.
that works great because that much super glue as it cures, there's a really strong smell. But yeah, it works great with the vapor mask. And then just go through and again do sanding. So I'm pretty sure I started with the red pads, which is probably the 120s, and then go to the 180 and then the 220, and just go through and make sure it's all good after it's all glued up. So that part works. Yep, that was 180. So there you can see it laying on there on the bench. That was 180. So this is the 220, and just run through and do some final corner edge sanding, and then do a little bit of the cleanup on the insides where the super glue was. Because since this is going to be stained, you want to try and get all the super glue out because the stain will not work. So again, this is the Behr Premium Semi-Transparent Barn Red stain that we're doing. And initially I was going to have it up on those things, and it's like, wait, that's not stable enough and I don't need it yet. So put it down where it's stable. Stability is more important than not having something messed up when you don't need it not messed up. Those little anti skid buttons that go on the little rockler pads work great, but you don't need it unless the bottom's wet. So I definitely recommend using the rubber gloves with stain because your hands will get all fun colored. Here we're just doing the bottom. As you can see, I got the little badge, name and date badge super glued in, and then just again putting the stain on the bottom. I ended up doing 2 coats of this stain on the box. As you can see there, it looks much better with the second coat. The first coat was okay, but the second coat really kicked it, so it worked much better. And here we're doing the crystal clear lacquer. And again, definitely wear the vapor mask for this. Do not mess up your lungs. Lacquer is not something you want to just breathe. That is very bad. So I don't have one of those nice rotating things, but cardboard box on a smooth surface works great for that. And then here we're doing the other side, and I put multiple coats of the lacquer. Basically, I ended up using the entire can on the box, and it worked really nice. And here's the first of the end credit things outside. This one was using my fancy video camera, so it's interesting how red this appears in this camera versus the orange that the cell phone comes up with. But the reason I did this one was it does much better for close-ups than the cell phone. And you can see there's little tiny bits of tear out, but nothing you can see at arm's length really. It's just if you go up close you can see little corner bits, but it came out really nice. The badge and the poplar bottom, even that looks good stained. And you can see there that's the oak. That's the cutoff piece from the same piece of oak that I used to make the test box. And you can see the difference in unstained, untreated wood versus the stained and lacquered wood. And again, it's the Behr semi-transparent stain and sealer, the Barn Red, if anybody likes that and wants to try it. And it's the Watco crystal clear lacquer. And since it's a cat box, again, superior scratch protection is probably a good idea. So that's awesome. And yeah, it dried fairly nice, and that worked really well. I'm really happy with how it came out. And so far, the lady has seen the pictures and things, and she's really pleased as well. So yeah, that's very cool. And like I said, I did this outside to take advantage of not only natural sunlight, but also the flowers. But yeah, you'll see I have another outro thing with my cell phone next. But again, you can see the difference in the coloring between the two. It's very cool. So here's the box finished. This one, that's just there for color matching. So this is an oak box with red barn stain on. And I'm doing it outside just so we get a little better color. Of course, we also get the nice sunshine glare, but that's all right. Got the nice 1/4-inch box joints. Little badge on the bottom. The bottom, I think, is poplar. It was a part of an old drawer, and the sides were from a piece of cabinet. And to tell you, or to compare the colors,
This is the plain wood, and that's the colored wood. So, other than the shine, you can see the color came out really nice. Nice and shiny. It's very smooth, especially on the outside. And yeah, I think it came out awesome.